Have you ever noticed that the most beautiful places you've ever been to are right up there in your head? Universes where you're finally someone important, where you speak and you're understood and people listen. And you go there to live just so you can tolerate this one. But what if I told you that this sanctuary that you've built for yourself is a slow acting poison? What if I told you it's just a cage built by your mind to ensure that you're never free? And no, this is not just daydreaming. This is something I like to call malignant fantasy. Malignant fantasy is not normal imagination. Healthy imagination is creative, it's generative, it moves towards life. You use your fantasies to bridge the gap between your dreams and your reality. But in a malignant one, you imagine something so that you don't have to move at all. Malignant fantasy is synthetic and it's all-consuming. It's a parallel reality that you construct and then you retreat into when life out here in reality gets too hard. A place where you run to avoid the dangers and the disappointments of the real world. I totally get it. It consumes your life. It sedates you. You don't visit it. You live in it and you live through it. And the more you do it, the more you dwell in your fantasy world, the more impossible and undesirable and more hostile that you perceive reality to be. But here's the thing, we don't create these fantasies because we are lazy or because we want to avoid life. We do it because we're in pain. The mind's primary directive is to avoid self-erasure. And when our mind perceives a threat to our sense of self and our sense of safety, it will create an escape hatch. And that escape hatch is our fantasies. We use it to regulate pain that feels too intense, like shame, fear, the emptiness of unmet needs. In our fantasy worlds, we're not afraid. We're not lacking anything. We're godlike. But the thing here is that it's a bypass. And like any bypass, it diverts the essential energy of the wound away from the site of the injury. And when that happens, the wound never heals. Now let me ground everything I've said so far by using a concrete example. Let's talk about Emeka. For 15 years, Emeka wasn't just an executive at his firm. He was his job title. When he walked into a room, the air made space for him. People sat upright to acknowledge his presence. He had that much presence. He was that important. He identified so deeply with his title as an executive. And then came the restructuring of the organization. He was given a cardboard box, a security escort, and a handshake. Emeka just did not lose his paycheck. He lost his sense of self. It felt like the air that once used to make space for him to occupy was now rushing in to fill the void where his sense of self used to be. And he felt all that atmospheric pressure crushing him slowly. The clock that woke him up in the morning used to once signal the beginning of the day where he could be something, where he could be the executive. Now it signals the beginning of the day where he's now a nobody. To Emeka's friends and loved ones, he was between roles. He was applying for a new position on LinkedIn. But in Emeka's psyche, something very different was going on. Emeka's psyche was screaming, avoid annihilation, avoid self-erasure, protect the self-concept. And to Emeka, applying for a mid-level job is self-erasure. It's shameful. It's humiliating. And worse, to risk rejection from a 20-something-year-old recruiter. Emeka said to himself, I would rather die. If I apply for this job, and I'm rejected by a 20-something-year-old recruiter, then it will confirm my deepest fear about what is happening right now, which is that the king is dead. So his mind built an escape hatch for him. His mind built a bunker, and he retreated into fantasy. In his fantasy, he's not just in his pajamas, staring listlessly into oblivion. He's now standing behind a mahogany desk in a boardroom, and in this version, he doesn't stay quiet when he's fired. He now delivers a monologue that is so magnificent, so charismatic, so visionary that even the CEO has to stand up and shake his hand and say, Emeka, I promote you. And then he plays this fantasy on loop over and over and over again in his head. Emeka became the CEO of a hallucination. He sacrificed his muddy, difficult reality to protect the ghosts of a dead self-concept. Emeka is not lazy. Emeka is not unmotivated. Emeka is afraid. Emeka is ashamed. Because he's scared that if he faces reality, he has to reckon with the fact that he has not only failed at something, but the thing which he has identified with for years is now dead. Now, maybe you're not Emeka. Maybe you don't have a golden era to lose because you've never had one. Maybe for you, your reality is that you're a 33-year-old late bloomer who hasn't quite figured out the mechanics of life. While everyone works through life with ease, and they go from one phase of life to the other with ease, you just can't seem to figure out where you stand in society. You just can't seem to figure out your left from your right. Your timetable is different. Your timeline is different. So for you, your fantasy is not a boardroom. It's just a version of today where you know what you want from life, where you know exactly what you're doing, and you're confident. Your fantasy is one where you aren't critically behind your peers in life. You're now using your fantasy to skip the clumsy phase that you should have had 12 years ago. You're staying in the bunker of your psyche because you're scared that at 33, the world won't forgive you for being a late bloomer. I can give so many vivid examples to illustrate my point, but we're going to be here for a very long time. But you get the point. What is your fantasy? When it comes to malignant fantasy, this is the trade that we make without realizing it. We trade the potential of a real life to get the guarantee of a pain-free simulation at the cost of everything. We pay with our time, and time is our one finite resource. And the malignant fantasy is time-consuming. Think about it. On the days where you have your most vivid fantasies, do you really do anything that day? You might just stand in your room walking back and forth, dreaming of a world where you're a dragon, you're a fire-breathing dragon. And then before you know it, 3 hours have gone by and you've done nothing. I've been there. You pay with your life force because the malignant fantasy is powered by something. Everything is energy. The energy that is going to your fantasy is your life force, your libidinal energy, your eros. When you channel everything towards your fantasy, you have very little left to actually live and do things in the real world. And that's why a lot of times when you're done fantasizing and everything, you feel tired, you feel exhausted, but you haven't done anything. So why is that? You pay with integration or lack of it. Because the you that is scared and wounded and ashamed, that you is locked away and forgotten. What this means is that you can't be a whole, integrated person. You're very fragmented, and that's the root of spiritual emptiness. You pay with manifestation. Because if your life force is being siphoned by a mirage, by something that doesn't exist, then what more do you have left to use to manifest your dreams? If your life force is constantly reanimating dead objects, you've essentially become Victor Frankenstein, animating a corpse. So what do we do about this? Let's start by deconstructing the imagined gaze of the world. Now, what do I mean by this? Your entire malignant fantasy is built to appease or defy an imaginary audience. You perform for a jury that exists only in your mind. Maybe it's the disapproving parents, the mocking peers, the critical society. You've internalized their eyes and their judgments, and you're trying to build a life or a fantasy that will finally win their approval, or at least silence their critical voices. Now, let me help you see the truth for what it is. You must see that you're all alone in a room, twisting yourself, contorting yourself into shape to avoid the glare of a spotlight in an empty stadium. You will slowly start to heal when you realize you are both the performer and the critical witness, all in one. It begins when you say, I am willing to be a failure. It's fine. So what? So what if you're a failure? I am willing to be the one who falls flat on her face. I am willing to be the fool on a journey. Let the phantom audience laugh. Their laughter is the echo of your own fear and your shame. When you willingly accept that you failed and that you're a fool, you disarm the entire tyranny of the imagined gaze. You break the contract. In the tarot, the Fool card is card 0. It is the beginning of the entire journey. The Fool is not a clown. The Fool is pure spirit stepping off a cliff into the unknown. He has nothing but a small bag with him. And that small bag is filled with his lessons and his zeal to live and learn. All the Fool has is his libidinal energy, his eros, and his intellectual humility. His intellectual humility to learn in the school of life. That is the starting point for everyone. The Fool does not know the outcome of his journey. The Fool is potential walking towards manifestation. And you cannot get to the magician without first being the fool or the failure. You cannot have a journey without first being the one who is willing to not know the way. Your malignant fantasy is an attempt to live at, is it card 10? The world, without first walking the path of the world. Your fantasy is a picture of the summits, not the climb. You must fall in love with the feeling of being a beginner again. Be the beginner at 40, 45. Be the failure at 30. So what? So what? You must worship the reality of the effort, not the phantom of the outcome. Now I want you to do this practice. When you feel the pull into the other perfect world, I want you to first of all stop. Gently pull yourself back. Do not follow the thoughts, but just slowly draw your awareness back to your body. Feel the shame. Feel the shame that is there. Feel the judgments, because it's all in the body. Locate its physical signature. And then, with your hand on your heart, I want you to speak to it. Say, I see you, and I'm choosing the real world with you in it. I am choosing the messy attempt. I am willing to be a fool with you. No, you're not dismantling your fantasy with violence. You're starving it of the only thing that gives it power, which is your refusal to reckon with what is real. You will build a life from the rubble of the imagined one. Brick by brick, you will build a life on the solid foundation of all your broken dreams. You will start from the ground up, from the scratch. You will be the beginner. And that's okay. That's actually beautiful. And for the first time in a long time, the air that you will breathe into your lungs will be pure and true and real. If you're ready to begin this journey, or maybe you've been in isolation for a very long time, but you're ready to put your toes out in the sun for a bit just to test the waters, I have a video up here. It's called The 8 Hard Truths That You Must Reckon With Before You Attempt to Go Back into the World. I want you to watch it. I'm proud of you, and I wish you the very best. Good luck.